Right, so let's have a look at 3 different ways that we can call subflows. So what we're going to be doing is we've got a little useful flow which is actually timestamps a C program by opening the text file and putting today's date time inside it. Okay, so the whole idea with subflows is it's something useful, reusable, something you can share around the team, and if you have something really cool, then other people can very easily use it. So I'll show you how that program works in a minute, but basically we are going to take this and we're going to put a small timestamp in the top like so. So let's have a look at the flow. So file, open, have your P examples, flow based add-on, and let's just do timestamp C program VIP. And it's doing what it does, and let's look at the arguments, and there's a couple of arguments. One is the name of the file, and then we've got a return code as well to say how did I get on, and basically a return code is set to -1 if it doesn't work. If it makes it all the way to the bottom, you get a return code 0. So if we just actions execute that, and you get file timestamped, and then if we go over to here, you'll see we've created a new version, and if we open that, you'll see there's a little date on the top like so. Okay, so all so far so good. And now what I'm going to do is I'll show you how to call it in 3 different ways. So there's a flow in here called call other flow. So let's have a look at that. Now, if you look in the designer actions, you'll see invert workflow, static. Now static, let's just copy that one in. Just so you can have a look at it. It's pretty straightforward to use. All you're going to be doing is clicking on this, finding the subflow you're interested in working on, and then you need to go in and define the arguments. So you need to go and, the arguments here is par C program location in, it's a string. Now here, this is the value we're going to be passing in. So I think I've got a value call in here. Let's have a look. Var file. And that now is going to move that value in. So that's how you link the variables in the calling program to calling flow to the calling subflow, by putting them in like so, and they'll be passed backwards and forwards. So that's how you do that, and it's pretty straightforward. So you can see here I've got an assign, I've got a log activity, which is basically saying calling a static subflow directly. I've got my XAML workflow, and then if I go into my define, you can see I've got my variables var file and var rc, and those are var file and var rc. Now they're set to prime.cs, and that's the first way of calling it. And what I'll do actually is I'll just break that by getting rid of that. When you're debugging, quite often it's just easier to stop the flow at a certain point by just deleting it and then adding that back in. If I do an actions execute now, you'll see file timestamped. Let's just go back to our folder, and you can see that we've actually put a timestamp in. Let's just go and have a look at that, and that's come in, and that's been copied and updated that. So now let's move on to the next one. So just move the log out of the way a little bit so we see what's going on, and pop that back like that, move that in there. Okay, now the next one is a little more complex, and this is using a workflow dynamic. Now the best way for you to get used to this is to actually use this example, because it's got everything you pretty much need to deal with. So if we go into the variables, you'll see that we've created 2 standard variables, return arguments and calling arguments. They are of type list dynamic argument. So you can just so you would just go in and pick list task automation list dynamic arguments, or let's just browse for types. I'll type list and click on the next drop down, browse for types, and you would have dynamic argument like so. And that's how you pick that up. Okay, so that's how we've added that particular thing, and so it's a little bit of a slightly inscrutable, but that's all you need to know, is just have that set. Then here we've basically gone invoke workflow, drop that on. If we look at the properties for that one, then you can see the arguments been passed in, the workflow path, etc., and the return arguments. You could actually just do add output property value, and that will actually create you a variable called list dynamic arguments anyway. which is a bit of a shortcut method if you don't want to bother typing it in. So let's just lose that, and we'll have a look at what the parameters, the variables that we've set in here. So you can see that we've var calling arguments, the flow name, which is the name of the flow. In this case, what we've done is we've actually just put that in as a variable, like so. Now the advantage of this methodology is that you could put the names of your flows in databases or spreadsheets and then read them in and dynamically call other flows. So it gives you quite a bit of flexibility in terms of creating test harnesses or running different flows dependent on the activity you're trying to achieve. So that's just gone in here. I've just hard-coded it, and it points to that timestamp program. And then you've got return argument and calling argument. Now what you need to do is you just need to create a collection. So we've created these as new lists. Okay, so these will be set up by default. You don't need to worry about those. That just means the first time they get called, they're going to be instantiated. You could use the object capability as well. And then what you need to do is, if you just come in here and take a look at this is pretty much static. So all you're going to do is use the dot argument name, dot argument value. Here you can see I'm passing in var file. This is the name of the parameter we're dealing with, and if you wanted more of them, you would just add in more, because these would be input parameters. And here you can see this is for the return one, and for the return one we've actually got parrc with a variable varrc. So that's how we link the two together. Slightly inscrutable, but once you've seen this example or used this example, it's a standard methodology. So if we now just go off and execute this, you'll see calling static subflow directly and dynamic subflow directly, return code. Let's go and have a little look. And the last one is the one that we care about. So again, if we pop up here, you'll see that that has been modified again. And now let's go back over here. So and then let's just test it with a failure. So I'm just going to put in a file name that doesn't exist, and that should test our error handling. And then if we do actions execute, the subflow itself has got some reasonable error handling in, and it's setting the return code to -1. We're calling it twice, so we're getting return code -1. So that's the way that you can ask if the flow has worked correctly and pass information backwards and forwards. In this case, it's just a return code, but it could be, if you were looking at the WebXE example, we could be passing back, for example, a currency exchange rate, which could then just be, you could make a call out to some Selenium code, run it, pass some parameters in, execute a screen, pull some information back, and then move on by passing the return values up. Okay, so that's how you do that. I'll just set this back to the working example like so. Okay, so that's that. Now let's talk about another way of doing it is with timestamp C program. Now what I want to do this time is I want to actually include it on my dialog. This is so useful. I actually want to put it as part of the designer so I can use it regularly without having to kind of worry about the parameter passing, etc., etc. So the way we do that is that we go off and we look at actions, export as add-on. So we just press that. It's going to say export flow as add-on, and you'll see a few messages coming up, and it will now say process complete. That's what you're looking for. And what we're going to do is go into our folder, and what you'll see now, there's a bunch of extra stuff has appeared in here. So let's have a look. So we've actually created a little bit of a C project, a C# project here, and we've actually gone off and assembled a DLL. So you might need to install something like Visual Studio Community Edition to get this working. But if we take this DLL from here, we'll just do a copy, and then let's just go to Tools, Open Program Data. And you'll see in there add-ons. I've already got a couple in here already. If I just click on Paste, that DLL will come in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to back to VIP. I'm just going to close it down, and let's open it again. And what you'll see here is exported flows, and we've got one called timestamp C program. So let's just go off and do file new, Let's just put a timestamp C program on the palette like so, all very straightforward so far. And we're just going to pop that in there. And then we're going to go and have a look at this activity. Let's just save this flow for a moment. File, save as. I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to call using designer. Action. And let's just have a look at this. So parrc, let's just create a variable called var return code, just make that an integer, like so. So the parrc, we just want to put in varrc, and the program location, let's just put in var file, and we're going to use the same thing as we did before, which is prime.cs, and we're going to just put that in there, file, like so. I'm using control space to just fill that in for me, and let's just put a quick log message in here to see what happens. Just drag a log onto there, like so, join that up, and let's just say rc equals ampersand rc, and we're good to go, and we can save that, and let's just execute this now. File timestamped rc equals 0. Let's just go back and make sure that our date modified has been changed, and again we'll nip back over here, and we can see that we've now been able to timestamp that file by literally just having the original flow, which was this flow timestamp C program. It is now available as an activity that you can then reuse amongst your team, or you can call many times from other flows. So hopefully you can see that's a very useful facility, and I would encourage you to use this to give a little bit more structure and organization and reusability to your use of VIP. Thank you very much.